Alright, as you can see, we made a little venue change back inside the garage. I don't know how the lighting is going to go, but I ended up getting a phone call while I was out there and cleaned up while I was on the phone and the camera was off. But the end of run, we had a bit of issue today. I had switched the needle between the ETX and the ET6, no, 7. The 7 is the rocker arm, and it was, the ETX really liked that little needle from the ET7, but the ET7 did not want to run because the fuel mixer is above the level of the tank, and I think that different shaped needle helps keep the fuel from running backwards out of the fuel mixer carburetor there and back down into the line, because I wasn't getting much fuel out, but then when I opened the valve to where I thought it should be, it wasn't drawing fuel up, it was actually letting a bubble back into the line. And then I had been just leaving the batteries in the ignition battery boxes here, but I have noticed that a couple of them are starting to leak, so I'm going to have to take the batteries out every week. I thought, because I was using them every week, that it would be just enough use to keep them from leaking, because a lot of times leaky batteries are from or not being used. But yeah, so I'm going to pull all these out. Yeah, this is a leaky battery I'll have to throw out, and the spring there has a bit of crud on it. And then, of course, the other issue was the ET1 here didn't have any compression this morning, and I, of course, had the head off to put the new muffler, well, exhaust pipe on it, since it's a straight pipe. There's no muffler on it now. So we will pop that off here in a second. I was pretty excited by how well the ETX ran this morning. It really does like that weird shaped needle out of the ET7, but like I said, I had to switch that back because the ET7 having problems now. I will look into moving the fuel tank on the ET7 up somehow, but let's see, that's the bad battery. So you can see the mounting bracket for the ET7 fuel tank here is just on the underside of the engine and only goes there. It's not like with the ETX, where the ETX had a vertical bracket so we could just lift it up. Yeah, so we'll have to think about the ET7. Finish pulling these batteries out, and I haven't showed it recently, but remember I was having problems with the batteries popping out of the holders. The center battery, as it vibrated, would pop up and out, and then the engine would quit. So I'm just using hair ties, because that's what I had around for elastic, and by wrapping it around the battery holders, it holds the middle battery in. So that's gone really well. Put that battery aside and pop the top off of the ET1 again. I have noticed that the way that I set these up, there is oil that likes to get onto the plugs. So every time I take them out, I wipe the ceramic off to make sure the oil isn't shorting the plug out. My guess is that since I had the head off, maybe when I was wiping it down, I got a bit of crud under the valves, because the valve seats on these are, well, the seats are small, the springs are not super strong, because it's a model, so a bit of anything that gets in under the valves is more than enough to prevent them from seating properly. Unlike bigger engines, they have big strong valves and can have enough valve spring on them so that small bits of, say, carbon or what have you just get crushed by the valve spring pressure. So oh, and then you can see close up the JB weld for sealing that. Well, I apparently got plenty of fuel into it somehow, so that's good. Go. Carefully wipe the head gasket off and set that there. I can't immediately see anything that is causing the valves not to seat properly, so I'll just give them a little there, and two head bolts and the spark plug. No compression. I guess maybe we'll put the rest of the head bolts in and tighten it up to see if we got anything. Alright, nothing. So, just give those a quick lap with my little system for lapping these. That spark plug out. Oh, and I better check the ring too. That's a good idea. Alright. C-clamp, holder and spring for the exhaust valve, or C-clip rather. C-clip. Go. Holder and spring for the intake valve. Alright. Now, I just had there it is. Just had this, a little bit of fuel line that I have from putting together the cooling system on the ETX. And pop these valves out. Oh, and you can see that intake valve is burning here on the sides from not sealing properly. Wipe that seat off, wipe the valve. Silicone. And put that on the end of the Dremel tool with a nice straight tool and set it on the slowest speed, and it is spinning that valve in there. And I'm just pushing down on the valve with my thumb a little bit while it spins. Pop that off of there and off of there. And then you can see that polished up that seat in there. So wipe the seat and the valve off. Set that out of the way, and we'll do the same with the exhaust. See, the exhaust has got a lot of carbon built up on it too. And the valve seat is just filthy on the exhaust, so that's probably why we had no compression. So, but you can see there's uneven buildup, so that again is an uneven seat. So it's spinning there. Alright. And you can see it has cleaned up that seat quite nicely. And it's also cleaned up that valve, not evenly, but nicely. I think I'm going to do that some more after wiping it off. Go. Oh, yeah. That definitely looks a lot better. I don't know how well we can see that, but it's much nicer looking valve now. Alright. Exhaust valve, intake valve, and then you can see the one spring here is longer than the other. That longer spring is the exhaust spring, because it's got to hold the valve shut tightly, so that when there's an intake stroke, it pulls the intake valve open with the vacuum. And there we go. this muffler keeps working loose, so while I have the head off, because that's the only way I can get this pipe on and off, I'm going to take it off, wipe the threads off, and get a dab of Loctite on there. Go. There. The Loctite should hold that nicely. Now, make sure we get this rocker right way around. Oh, do not forget the head gasket. Well, these engines have been running pretty good, and honestly the carbon buildup is pretty high, so having to clean them up like this is pretty standard maintenance for hit and miss engines in general. So it might seem like I spend a lot of time futzing with all these valves, but it's not. Well, I don't feel like it's an inordinate amount of time spent, because model engines are pretty finicky overall. So when I started getting these, I kind of expected I'd have to do a lot of futzing. And the ET1 is still overall been the most reliable, reliably running and reliably sealing. So, alright, let's see now. Oh, there we go. I can already feel there's compression now. Yep. So that was that. Just had to clean up the valve seats a bit, and so the trick for quick cleaning the valve seats is just a bit of RC fuel line, because it slips right over a straight bit. This happens to be a little conical cutter for the Dremel. It fits over both parts, and then you can spin the valves pretty easily to lap them. And something I've never noticed, but I'm sure a lot of people have read the instructions and figured out, is on your Dremel wrench, the screwdriver end for doing up the mandrels and sanding mandrels and cutting wheel mandrels, the wrench end for tightening the collet, but the hole in the middle here is a quick measure for mystery tools to make sure they're going to fit in the collet chuck there, because the Dremel chuck is for 1/8 inch shank, or not 1/8 inch. I forget what size the shank on a Dremel tool is, but it's an easy way to make sure that whatever thing you grab is going to fit in your Dremel. Because I have run across getting dental burrs and other things with a non-standard shank and trying to stick them in my Dremel and being real frustrated that they didn't fit. So yeah, otherwise it was a fun day. Short because I have other stuff to do today, so I didn't have time to be out in the garage playing with everything the whole time, but leave everybody to their day, and I'm sure that next week this is going to run just fine.